Hey, everybody, and welcome into a Friday edition of KC Sports Tonight. I am Mark Poulose, joined by Gabe Swartz here on Friday, July the 11th. And just when you think we're going to have a quiet sports weekend here in the middle of July, it's just hot outside. Late last night, we have a little bit of a bomb dropped on us in the realm of the Royal Stadium discussion. We're going to talk about the Clay County term sheet, or the term sheet that Clay County says the Royals sent them. Also, the Royals have a pair of new guys headed down to Atlanta for the All-Star game. We're going to talk about Mikel Garcia and Carlos Estevez as the Royals also wrap up their final home series of the first half against the New York Mets. And then to wrap it up, we're going to talk about our top 5 players currently on the Chiefs roster as we get ready for training camp, which begins in just 11 short days as we inch closer and closer to football season. But we got to start with the topic of the day, because everyone knows, and the Royals have said it, when the lease expires at the Truman Sports Complex in 2031, the Kansas City Royals will not play baseball at Kauffman Stadium. Now, this has sent, we've known this for a little bit now here in Kansas City. We know the Royals are leaving Kauffman Stadium. Last night, a county official from Clay County says that the Royals had sent a term sheet over to the county for them to review, kind of going over if the Royals were to move to North Kansas City, maybe what some of the plans would look like and what they want things to potentially look like. So we know that North Kansas City is a site. Gabe, I guess kind of when that news broke last night, what was your initial reaction? And then kind of what are your thoughts on this whole situation with Clay County specifically?
Well, it almost feels to me like the Royals, to a little bit of an extent, it's like they're restarting the process of engaging the different areas of the Kansas City Metro, yes, I think they're doing their due diligence. No, I don't think that Clay County is their preferred destination, and I also don't think that this coming out is any indication as to where they're most likely to end up. I still think that I take of all the things that you can take John Sherman's word for, I do believe him when he says that downtown baseball is the thing that the Royals want the most, and it's something that they want that the Chiefs do not, because the Chiefs' two options are either stay at Arrowhead and renovate that, which is obviously not in the downtown Kansas City area, or probably go out to the Legends and go to the Kansas City, Kansas side of things. So I think that the thing that can make the Royals unique is being downtown, being closer to the urban metro core of the city, and making it easier for people to just, on a whim, be like, okay, I'm going to walk down to the game tonight over at Washington Square Park right next to Union Station. That's a location that makes sense. I think that's truly what they want. And until proven otherwise, we've heard from so many different sites of, this might happen, this might happen, this might happen. Until it's officially announced and it's something other than that, I will believe that that is where it's going to end up.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment. For me, this is really all about, and again, this is entering the realm of opinion, and I could be completely wrong on this, but for me, what this looks like to me is Clay County trying to gain some momentum for their pitch. Today, they had Governor Mike Kehoe in town in North Kansas City, actually, to sign a Clay County Sports Commission into effect, kind of create. So I know a lot of people around here kind of wondering now, is Clay County the front runner? In no way, shape, or form would I say that. I really believe the Royals are doing their due diligence to find the best offer that's out there available to them. John Sherman is a tremendous businessman. He did not be able to acquire the Royals by not making shrewd business decisions. And right now, the Chiefs and Royals are going to have to do the same thing, get the best offer for them, because all this, to me, is about how can they increase the value of the team? How can they make more money? How can they make the franchises that they have, the investments that they've made, more profitable? And is that going to be in Clay County? If we look at this objectively, or at least in my opinion, the answer is no. I don't see how Clay County really draws what you want there. And also, from my understanding, that the Royals they're doing this with several different sites. Like, they want to find what's the best offer for them. Right now, we know the offers from the state on the table, with the state of Kansas offering to pay up to 70% of the stadium through Star Bonds, and then with the state of Missouri offering to pay up to 50% of the cost of the new stadium. Right now, if the Royals or Chiefs want to be in Missouri, they're going to have to start some negotiations with a city or a county to come up with more money to make the offer in Missouri more attractive. And if you ask me, in my heart of hearts, do the Chiefs or Royals want to go to Kansas? I think the answer is no. I think both teams want to stay in Missouri. I think the Chiefs would maybe like to preserve or because Arrowhead is a very special situation. You see a lot of these new stadiums built around the league, like you're seeing the one that's being built right now by the Buffalo Bills. It really lacks a lot of the culture and a lot of the history. Like they're very nice buildings, they're very nice facilities, they're state of the art. But do they have the character of an Arrowhead Stadium or a Lambeau Field? I think the answer there would be no. And I think for the Chiefs specifically, I don't think that's something that they want to give up. And then with the Royals, I just as Gabe said, I think where they want to end up is in downtown Kansas City. I don't see them ever wanting to go to the state of Kansas, and I really don't see them wanting to go to Johnson County. I can't think of a single person who lives in Johnson County or who lives near Overland Park that wants the Royals to move there. So like when I see people talk about some of these certain sites, I really think it's these teams are trying to negotiate, and they're going to have to express interest in these other places to get better offers out of what they want. Gabe, that was a lot of things I just said there.
Yeah.
What do you kind of think?
The part about Arrowhead and that being what the Chiefs want, I don't necessarily believe. I think that if it's such an obvious spot that if Clark Hunt was convicted that he wanted to restore or continue his dad's legacy and his dad's desire or care for the legacy that Arrowhead Stadium had and all of the history that's been in that building and the things that are continuing to be added to in terms of the history. There's a lot of history being made in it. The last half decade plus of football and meaningful, memorable football games that have been played there. If that's what he really wanted, then they would have just taken the Missouri deal as soon as it was passed because you know that that's as good as the offer is going to get. I think that it's easier said than done, and that you can't say anything other than Arrowhead is a special place. We saw Patrick Mahomes said that today. But then at the same time, Patrick said, yeah, but we also know, like, if it's in Kansas, it's going to be top of the top. And I think that whether it's true or not, the general public, the Kansas Cityans who are going out to Arrowhead every Sunday, their nostalgia for what that is, outdoor football on grass, all these different things, it means more to them than it ever could to somebody who is in line to profit off of a massive new stadium with the ability to host indoor concerts, the ability to host the NCAA tournament, the Final Four, the Super Bowl, all of these different events. Yeah, like who knows? Like
a lot of money to be made.
There's all those different things. So I don't necessarily agree with that. But you and I are on the same page as far as the desire for downtown baseball, and I can say that like I can remember the amount of time that I spent living in Toronto growing up is that you can go. There are a lot of people who are just downtown who just on a whim decide to go to a baseball game. But you know what does not happen in Kansas City is people don't just on a whim decide to go out to Kauffman Stadium. That is a critical decision that, I'm going to drive myself out to the sports complex and go there. And if they moved to Clay County, that idea stays the same. And so I think that they're going downtown at some point.
Yeah, I really think so. I just don't. Clay County to me, it just doesn't seem viable. I really don't see good routes to get in there. I mean, it does. There's not. John Sherman's talked about wanting to have like a ballpark village or maybe something like they have in St. Louis next to the Cardinal Stadium. I don't know. I just really don't see that happening in North Kansas City. I see that much more likely in downtown. But I will say there were a lot of Royals fans last year in Jackson County that did not vote for a new stadium, that voted to say Save the K, and they aren't going out to Kauffman Stadium. So I want to say, like, if you were one of the Save the K people, you need to go out to Kauffman Stadium if you actually want it to still be there and kind of support the team. But I know the Royals obviously have said that they're going to leave there. But it all comes down to the fact that I think John Sherman really wants a ballpark more than anything else for this team because he sees that as the best way to make the Royals not only the best investment for him, but the most competitive team possible. I believe that he equates downtown baseball with an increased payroll, with increased competitiveness throughout the league. So we're going to have to see what happens there, but there's always something going on in the realm of the stadium discussion. We're going to have to again see what happens with that one. Anything else there, Gabe?
No. I'm stadiumed out for the day.
Yeah, they always find a way to sneak it back in July the 11th. But hey, 2031, the Royals say they're leaving Kauffman Stadium. It takes years and years to build stadiums, guys. So next year's 2026. I would estimate it takes about 5 years to build a stadium. So things are going to start happening sooner rather than later. And I really would predict that we'd see more movement from the Royals before we see the Chiefs reveal their hand. But I would also say neither of them wants to go to a vote in Jackson County and lose. If that situation were to come up again, if both teams went to a ballot in Jackson County and lost, I would think Kansas City would be in a very bad situation in regards to retaining these teams, because that would not be good. All right, two more topics here to talk about with the Royals. The first one, the Royals had a pair of players added to the All-Star roster today. The first one was closer Carlos Estevez, who was, I believe, he leads the American League in saves, or tied for the lead with 25. And then the other one was Michael Garcia, a third baseman who has produced like one of the best players in all of baseball, specifically one of the best players at third base this season. We saw he was snubbed not once, not twice, not three times. The fourth time he gets into the All-Star game. So the Royals now have 4 All-Stars for back-to-back seasons. Gabe, the Royals are 46-48. I am a little surprised to see 4 All-Stars from a losing team. What do you think about this?
Yeah, there's only 4 teams in baseball that have more All-Stars than the Royals, and it's the Tigers, the Yankees, the Mariners, and I believe the Mets.
I think you're right. Yeah.
It's a who's who list of teams that are mostly locked into a very competitive season, most driver's seat for a playoff spot. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily make as much sense until you like look into it and you're like, okay, well, most of the Royals' downfall for this season, I think, is that a lot of the bottom of the order and a lot of the non-stars have completely no-showed for a majority of the season. Michael Garcia, though, is a guy who didn't even start on opening day. So 2024 opening day, he leads off, he hits a home run, first at bat of the season. A year later, he's not in the opening day starting lineup, and now he is an all-star. So it's kind of a crazy bit of a turn. Carlos Estevez, yeah, he was an all-star in 2023, so you knew that it was possible, and there was a lot of buzz when he was signed that this was solidifying the Royals bullpen. Yeah, that's what it's done, and this is a guy who's going to take a little bit of the load off of Lucas Erceg in terms of carrying the bullpen. You and I have had the debate of like who is the best Royals reliever. I think that saves carry the day and they carry the headlines in terms of who's going to get the all-star belief. Lucas Erceg was also on the injured list for a decent portion of the first half of the season. So yeah, this makes sense. And it was a little surprising that Carlos Estevez wasn't selected until now, but it's well-deserved. And I think that the 4 guys who are going, you could even make the case that Seth Lugo deserves to go with the way that he's pitched, and that he could have, if he got the run support that he got last year and he pitched the same way, he would be an all-star just like he was last year. But it's the first time since 2015 and 2016 that the Royals have had 4 all-stars in back-to-back seasons, because last year it was Bobby Salvi, Cole Reagan, Seth Lugo. This year it's Bobby, Chris Bubich, Carlos Estevez, and Michael Garcia. And to that point, Mark, I think that's my main takeaway, is that the Royals are in as good of a spot as they've been in since a decade ago, because not only is it 4 all-stars in 2 straight years, it's, aside from Bobby, it's 3 different guys. And it's not, if you had come to me on opening day and said, a second Royals hitter is going to make the All-Star game other than Bobby Witt Jr., I would have said, oh, okay, yeah, Salvi made it. Or I would have said, oh, wow, Vinny Pasquantino had a great season. Vinny's actually having a decent year, and it's still Michael Garcia because he's 8th in batting average in the MLB.
I think that's a tremendous point, that it really speaks to the depth of this Royals team that they've had to, kind of recapture. Because a couple of years ago, what was it, 55, 56 wins? And then the next 2 years after that, you have 4 All-Stars each year, and only one of them is the same guy.
Yeah.
I think that kind of shows that the Royals have, that they have some talent. And I really think that the Royals, Michael Garcia is a guy, and Vinny Pasquantino, both of those guys, I think are young guys that they're going to have to maybe explore the possibility of extending these guys. Now with Vinny, we've seen quite a bit more body of work of above average major league play. But I think with Michael Garcia, I know last year he batted in the 230s. It didn't look great. But you would see a little bit. I'm a big guy on the eye test. You would see this guy hit the ball hard. You would see the flashes that would make you think that this guy had the potential to be a productive major league player. And then this year, you see him blossom into the player that he has become, and now he's finally recognized as an all-star, even though his play was of that caliber. Very cool to see that with Michael Garcia. But again, these are guys that I think they're underrated across baseball. I think if you went, even outside, even within our own division, if you went to towns in the Central, if you went up to Minneapolis, or say you go to Chicago, a lot of these guys, I don't know if they're maybe thinking about Vinny Pasquantino or Michael Garcia as really, game-changing impact players, but they are. And I think if the Royals, they're never going to be able to pay these guys the price when they become free agents. They're just, other teams have more resources. It just is what it is. The Royals are not going to be able to financially compete. But if you identify them early and you sign them now, you can really build this core and make it a place where maybe Bobby Witt Jr. in a couple years down the line elects to opt into his player options and stay in Kansas City, because this is a guy who wants to win a World Series here. There are 2 young players who could become World Series caliber players or get the Royals to that point. Gabe, what do you think about that? I really think Garcia and Pasquantino.
I think that they have to make a decision in terms of extending one or both of them, and the outlook that the Atlanta Braves took very early on in the careers of Ronald Acuna Jr. and Ozzie Albies. Yeah, Ozzie Albies, that has not turned into the incredible deal that it looked like at the start, and it's nearing its end now, and maybe because of the decline of him, the Braves want to get out of it at the end of the season. But that being said, I think that making extensions now at reasonable deals before you get late into the contract and the guy sees a mega payday a year later and basically says, okay, I'm not going to get this from Kansas City, I might as well just wait and go to free agency. That's kind of what happened with the entirety of that last Royals World Series core. It happened for Lorenzo Cain going to the Brewers. It happened with Eric Hosmer specifically going to the Padres and getting a mega payday. So I think that getting out ahead of that and the future of the Royals, yeah, you've seen that John Sherman has been more willing to spend than the ownership in previous years, and was indicative of that by the way that he extended Bobby Witt Jr. I think that you would hope that Garcia or Pasquantino, one or both. I think Vinny specifically, because of the way that he's kind of become like the community figure, an outspoken guy, a guy who's involved in kind of the clubhouse vocal leader as anybody other than Salvador Perez or at the same level as Bobby in terms of being the guy who the media goes to kind of get the pulse of the locker room. I think that's the kind of thing that's on the table. And the last thing I would say about this is that I think if the Royals front office had the crystal ball, obviously they did not, because of course he did not start on opening day. If they knew what Michael Garcia was going to be, I think what they would have traded Brady Singer for is something other than Jonathan India, because the skill sets overlap a little bit, and obviously Michael's faster, he steals more bases, all those kinds of things. But he doesn't always necessarily hit for a ton of power, and so the skill sets overlap a little bit more. I think that the Brady Singer trade, in hindsight, would have been probably better for a corner outfield bat, who they're probably in the market for ahead of this trade deadline, instead of Jonathan India. But it's a good consolation prize that Michael has developed into what he's been this season. So.
No, it really is, and I think that is a tremendous point. Had they known that Michael Garcia was this good, the offseason would look different. This team would look different. But, he's 25 years old.
Yeah.
Like, he's very, very young, and it's cool to see, Michael put it together. I love what you said, though, about Vinny Pasquantino being, like, the emotional leader of this team, because I feel like often when we talk about the Royals, we talk about Salvador Perez in that light, we talk about Bobby Witt Jr. in that light, but when you walk into the clubhouse, Vinny Pasquantino has a huge presence, and he really is, in many ways, the emotional leader of this team. I remember on Monday we were out there, and Cole Reagans, it was the first day that Cole Reagans had thrown since he was dealing with the rotator cuff and the groin injury. Vinny just across the room is like, "Hey, how's your arm doing?" And like everyone stops and listens and looks. Like Vinny has the. What I'm saying is he's a key piece of this franchise. Yeah. And you were talking about Bobby Witt Jr.'s the extension that he got. I remember on Bob's 25th birthday, before the game, actually after the game is when they had the players only meeting, and it wasn't great. But before the game, we were talking about the success of Bobby Witt Jr. and how good he is at 25 years old. And one thing that Vinny said that really stuck out to me was that he was like, Bob has a long-term commitment from this team, and that really means a lot. When Vinny says something like that, I think Vinny might want a long-term commitment from this team, and I think he's definitely shown that he's a quality major league player, and I think a lot of Royals fans would enjoy to see him stay here in Kansas City for years to come. But Here we go. The Royals, the first half of the season ends this week, and the Royals are more than halfway through the season, but it's their last home series before the All-Star break. They have a 3-game set against the team they face in the 2015 World Series, which the Royals won in 5 games. They're taking on the New York Mets. Gabe, a lot on the line here. The Mets 53-41, the Royals 46-48, but the Royals just 3.5 games out of the playoff picture of that last wild card. The Royals, I really feel like they're playing good. They're playing some of their best baseball this season. What do you want to see out of this series?
Win 2 of the 3, I think, is a fair hope for the Royals to close this thing out. You're getting the Mets at a good time. They're, I think, 2-8 in their last 10. The Royals are 7-3 in their last 10, 8-4 in their last 12. So yeah, as you mentioned, playing really good ball. I think that that's a decent expectation. I also think that the offense is looking about as good as it's gotten. And again, Bobby has started to really get going at home and get going in the month of July. That's big. And the best version of this lineup is the version that gets the extra base hitting and the slugging that Bobby, Vinny, Salvia, and Cags delivered this week, with some of the bigger hits. So I think that 2 out of 3 is the hope. And if they can if they're 48-49 at the All-Star break, and that would feel like a team that's hovering around 500 despite some really, really poor stretches of baseball, I think that gives you the chance. And I think that this team knows that they're in the conversation for forcing management into buying and getting them some help for the stretch, because every single team in the AL wildcard race you can point to, even the Yankees, you can point to and say, oh, they've had some really poor stretches of baseball recently. The Red Sox, the Rays, the Mariners, all of them. The Mariners just got swept by the Yankees. So you're only 3.5 games out of that last wildcard spot. You are truly going to be, barring an absolute collapse, you're a really good week of baseball away from being right in it every single week. So I think that 2 out of 3 this weekend is the goal.
Yeah, I didn't want to drink too much of the Royals Kool-Aid being out there on Monday, seeing the confidence, and then they swept the Pirates, and here we go. You know, I think it's safe to say the boys are playing some ball. We might see them go on a run, and it honestly would feel a little bit like a little bit of a classic Royals season for me if they were to turn it on right here, because it's just they weren't performing, and then they just get hot, and then they go there, and we see what happens. They get to the postseason, magic certainly happens. All right, we got a couple minutes here to close it out. I want to make sure that we get this topic because it's very interesting, I think, to everyone here in Kansas City. So training camp begins on July 22nd, just 11 short days away, and I know a lot of Chiefs fans are trying to find a way to kind of get through the football off-season. Well, we're inching closer and closer to the start of camp. But before we get there, we're going to talk about our top 5 Chiefs. Gabe and I both, we put together our list before we got here on the show. I think we're going to have to start from the bottom up. All right, we're going to go with number 5. Gabe, you want to lead us off?
I was going to say, I think we go top down.
He's going top down. I think we both have the same number 1.
That's why I'm saying I think that the debate comes at near the end.
All right. We're going to go with number 1.
Mahomes.
Shockingly, we both have quarterback Patrick Mahomes.
There you go.
Anything else you want to say?
I think that's unanimous.
What's understood doesn't have to be explained.
Exactly.
All right, number 2.
I've got Chris Jones at 2.
Whoa, all right. I actually have the same one with Chris Jones,
Okay.
but I think we should explain how we arrived at this decision. Because for me, with Chris Jones, I always think about football as being a matchup game. Like it's in so many ways. Chris Jones takes almost 2 guys up on every single play. What does that do? That frees someone else up on offense. We also know he's a game wrecker in there on the inside. When Chris Jones isn't in there, it looks a lot different. For me, the game's played in the trenches. Defensive tackle is one of the most important positions on the team, and Chris Jones, in my opinion, is the best in football. What do you think?
I think that's I agree with that completely. I think he's the best defensive tackle in football. It's been clear. I think even at the very end of Aaron Donald's career, you could argue that Chris Jones was playing as good and maybe not getting necessarily the respect because people just thought, oh, you know what, the Chiefs, they're good because Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce in the offense. And so I don't know if he's always gotten as much respect, but last year he carried a defense that otherwise did not pressure the quarterback very well outside of him. And yes, there's plenty of you see the inside the Chiefs mic'd up and all that kind of stuff, and George Karlaftis getting multiple sacks against the Texans in the playoff game, and Chris being like, well, you ever going to do it when you're the main focus of the defense, or are you just going to clean up all my work? And I think that there's a little bit of joke, but as they say, there's always a little bit of truth in jokes. And I think Chris Jones knows that he's the guy there. So.
Yeah, no,
2.
Absolutely. Love that all. And he's been working hard all off season, even though he has accomplished so much. All right, number 3. What do you got, Gabe?
I've got Creed Humphrey.
Ooh, wow. Going with the center on the offensive line. Obviously, he's the highest paid center in football. Tremendous player. For number 3, I'm staying on the defensive side of the football with a 2-time All-Pro.
Okay.
McDuffie, Trent McDuffie. I really believe a corner is such an important position in football, because if you can eliminate a good wide receiver, or if you can maybe change a game with a turnover. I mean, McDuffie for me in a passing league is so important. But with Creed, I totally see this.
I just lean on he is the best player at his position, and I think the gap between him and number 2 at the position is pretty significant. I think that there's he's a building block of the team. I'm not saying that that's not what Trent McDuffie is. I just think that Creed is near the top, or he is the peak of the center position. But I have Trent McDuffie 4. So I'm not going to disrespect Trent McDuffie at all.
No, Creed definitely belongs in there. I mean, we were just talking about how important the trenches are. It's on defense and on offense. Creed Humphrey out there making all the calls, keeping Patrick Mahomes upright. Very important. We know Creed is elite. You're going to get no complaints from me. All right, number 4. So number 4, you have McDuffie.
Yep.
Number 4, I have a guy, he might have caught a little bit of a stray from you earlier, but I think he's one of the best young edge rushers in all of football.
Wow.
I'm going with George Karlaftis. This guy is a game changer. In the biggest games, I know obviously Chris Jones has taken a lot of attention there on the defensive line, but George Karlaftis makes plays, and he has since he was a rookie. And I just love the way that he plays the game. I love the way that he carries himself, and I really think he's one of the best players, edge rushers in all of football. What do you think about that?
I think he's really good. I also think that kind of speaks to the greatness of Chris Jones. Is there was so much of early on in his playoff career, and early on when the Chiefs started to play a bunch of playoff games, it was, Chris Jones, he's not getting any playoff sacks. When's he ever going to get his first playoff sack?
Well, triple teaming him.
And it didn't come until the AFC Championship game in 2022 the 2022 season, January of 2023 against the Bengals. And that speaks to the fact that his teammates, Frank Clark, now George Karlaftis, they've gotten so many opportunities to play playoff games. They are fast rising the all-time sacks list in playoff games because, the Chiefs play a ton of playoff games. And, yes, Chris Jones gets all this attention. So, I good for George Karlaftis being what he is, but I don't have him on my list.
I'm very high on Karlaftis, but I love how you brought it up earlier about Chris attracting all that attention, because I know last year against the Texans when George had those 2 playoff sacks, right after the game, the first thing Chris Jones said, are you going to be able to do that when they game plan for you? Because that's
we'll see that this year, hopefully.
We're going to see a furious George. We'll see. I think he might take a leap and really surprise some people. He really is one heck of a football player. All right, number 5. Gabe, where are we going here?
Number 5. I know we're down against the clock here, but I'm going, and this is a little bit more of a projection. I think what we saw early in last season is critical, and I think we're getting a little bit of a step back from Travis Kelce. I have healthy Rashee Rice as the 5th best player on this team, because I think he's the most critical piece to the Chiefs' offense. Yes, aside from Patrick Mahomes, but he is the most critical piece in terms of it reaching the ceiling of the passing attack, is him being healthy. We saw that last year. Hopefully we see that again this year.
I love that pick. Rashee's very good. The one thing I did not put him there for number 5 for me. I'm very curious to see how he comes back from the injury. We know we've seen him out there in the offseason. He looks great, but we'll see it when they actually are tackling. But for me, I'm going to go special teams. I'm going to go with Harrison Butker.
Okay.
You know, you gotta make your kicks. Like, I know people don't really think of kicker as a traditional football position. Like, you see them out there at practice, they're not really with the rest of the team. They're only with the specialists. But the fact of the matter is that guy's got to kick a football through the uprights, and he just does it in the most clutch moments. And I love what we've seen out of him. So what do you think about that, Gabe?
Yeah,
Butker, number 5.
He's a critical piece of the Chiefs dynasty.
Hey, he certainly is. There. Hey, this is always up for debate. I probably should have had Creed on there, but it is what it is. Didn't have him, but he's ruling in the trenches. But that's all we have here on this Friday edition of KC Sports Tonight. So for myself, Mark, and Gabe Swartz, we will see you next week. Take care, guys.